Yeah, the Conservatives were focusing on education policy today, promising to target universities that are ripping off young people and drive a shift towards apprenticeships with 100,000 new places by the end of the next Parliament. Our economics reporter Neil MacDonald is in the newsroom now. So, Neil, what is the plan for apprenticeships?
Well, Cathy, apprenticeships are critical for getting young people into work, for boosting their productivity, for helping to level up the economy. The Conservatives say that they accept all those arguments, and that's why they're advocating the creation of 100,000 new apprenticeship places. However, those new places are also needed because the apprenticeship system has got into some trouble in recent years. Let me show you what's happened to apprenticeship starts in England in the 2010s. You see how the line goes up, but actually since 2017 it's been declining. Current total of 337,000 a year, that's actually down by a third. Conservative plan takes it up to 440,000, but you see from the chart that it's still well below the peak from the middle of last decade.
So what's gone wrong then?
Well, in 2017, a policy was introduced to encourage apprenticeships. It has clearly not worked out that way. The apprenticeship levy is a charge. It's paid by big companies. It creates a big pot of money that's meant to fund this type of training. A lot of business organisations, however, say it's very cumbersome, difficult to administer, and so a lot of companies just don't bother. A lot of them also point out that there's now almost half of apprenticeships are actually going to people over the age of 25. And what that suggests is that companies are retraining existing workers rather than creating new jobs for young people.
So join the dots for us from apprenticeships to universities then.
Yeah, the Conservatives need to find £885 million to fund this scheme. They think that they can find that by scrapping courses at some universities which they say don't boost the earnings of the students who take them and are therefore, in their words, ripping them off. However, today the body that represents UK universities struck back against that. They released data which they say shows that it does pay off in the first 10 years of working life to take a degree. The chart here shows you earnings for non-graduates, people who could have gone to university but didn't. The second line shows you what happens for graduates up to about the age of 30. It's lagging at first because, of course, they're not in the workforce, but by their 30th birthday, they're about £8,000 a year better off. Now, if that analysis is correct, and critically if students think that's correct, then many of them could simply decide to switch to different degrees, maybe at different universities, and the more that happens, the less likely it is that the Conservatives will be able to generate the £900 million of savings which they're hoping to find.
Neil, thanks very much. Well, earlier I spoke to the Conservative Party chairman, Richard Holden, and I began by asking him to name some degree courses he thought were a rip-off.
Well, I saw one the other day for some contemporary circus skills, which I thought was, probably not degree level necessary, not something that somebody needs to go away from home for 3 years to study and pay tens of thousands of pounds for, which if they don't pay it back, then gets picked up by the taxpayer. And I don't think
Where was this degree in circuses?
I believe it was one of the universities, in the new universities in the southwest. And it just really seems to me that when you're looking at these things, I want young people to have as much opportunity as possible, really, whenever possible, earn when they learn. I think there was an obsession from the sort of Blair era of everybody going to do a formal sort of 3 or 4 year university degree. I don't think that's a really sensible idea. When I talk to young people up in my constituency, and I've run several apprenticeship fairs up there, what they really want to do often is earn and learn at the same time.
But you've named one degree in the southwest. That doesn't seem to me the basis for this whole policy.
No, well, it isn't the basis of this policy, Cathy. That's why I said there have been a lot of studies which show that actually with people going to university studying certain degrees, that they're not getting actually what they thought they were getting, which is a route into a good graduate job afterwards. And actually...
But can you name any others? That's what I'm after. Just, you've cited one.
Fine. Well, there's others. We've heard about some, like, football studies. I can't remember exactly where that is. But there's a lot of these degrees which seem to be there, which aren't delivering for people, and actually could be far better catered for by doing a degree apprenticeship or an apprenticeship apprenticeship.
You just talked about football studies. I mean, sports is one of the areas, and the business of sport is one of the areas in which the UK excels. I don't really buy that.
It is, no, but you don't need to buy it from me. You can listen to the academics who've looked into this in detail, looked across the piece, actually, various think tanks, various academic studies, looking into different degrees, different universities. And this isn't about targeting universities as a whole or about targeting individual education establishments as a whole. What it's about saying is, what can we do better? What can we deliver better for young people, better for students, in a way which actually helps them to get more out of life?
Let's just look at how good the apprenticeships are. Businesses say the system is so broken that they've ended up handing back £3.5 billion to the Treasury unspent. And that's the issue here. What you're offering as an alternative is not necessarily that good.
I think, Cathy, what you're actually saying there is actually, I think you've put two things together which are diametrically opposed. One of the things we want to do is have really good apprenticeships right across the piece. What businesses are saying, some businesses, in the older system, before we changed it, before we had that rigorous apprenticeship system that we've introduced and massively expanded, is that people were using apprenticeships as a way of putting people on low-paid work. We've stopped that from happening. That was a problem in the past under the last Labour government, and we have fundamentally changed apprenticeships, just like we fundamentally improved the education outcomes for kids right across the country.
Sorry. You just blame the last Labour government. You've been in power 14 years.
Yes.
And since the apprenticeship levy was introduced, which was on your watch, apprenticeships have fallen from 500,000 to around 340,000. So they've fallen by a third.
No, Cathy. I think if you drill down into the figures, and I know Channel 4 viewers are always interested in the detail, if you look at it, what we've done is we've really curtailed those level 1 apprenticeships. That means that's a pre-GCSE level apprenticeship, right? Which was something which was clearly ridiculous, and we've really moved away from that. We've really pushed the better and higher level apprenticeships. That's level 3 apprenticeships, which are A-level equivalent, and also those level 4, 5 and 6 level apprenticeships, which are those old HNC, HND and degree level apprenticeships. We've been really driving quality and standards across the board. And we're not...
But if there's such a roaring success, why do barely half complete them?
No, well, let's look into the detail of that, and that's because what we've had to move away from is these ones which people didn't like, didn't work, weren't actually delivering for them in the first place. Instead, what we're moving towards now is, and we've made really significant progress in this area, is higher quality, better apprenticeships, which actually lead on to good jobs in the long term.
As a result of this policy, you suggest 1 in 8 graduate courses will close. Do you think, as a result of that, universities will have to close?
I don't think so. I think what we'd hoped for when we saw...
Not a single one?
Well, let me answer the question, right? I think what we'd hoped for when universities were expanded back in the 90s and early 2000s, and there was a big expansion in them, I think what we'd hoped for is real good specialisation in our university sector. I think too often what we saw is universities just trying to get bums on seats because they got cash through the door. I want to ensure that every young person gets a maximum opportunity available to them, which also enables them, wherever possible, to earn money while they're doing it.
Richard Holden, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Cathy.
Well, back to the breaking news and the confusion over whether the Labour leadership will allow the veteran MP Diane Abbott to be a candidate in the general election. A short while ago, she told a rally that she will be a candidate in Hackney by any means possible. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, joins us from Westminster. Gary.
Yes, events moving quite fast tonight and puzzling, I think, to many in the Labour Party what's going on, worrying to some on the left. The leadership thought that there was a deal, an outline deal that Diane Abbott might accept to be allowed a dignified re-entry into the Parliamentary Labour Party and in return to step down quietly at the general election, say it was all of her own volition. That seems to have blown up tonight. Listening to Diane Abbott, you can hear her words now. It sounds like, whether it's as a Labour candidate or potentially like Jeremy Corbyn, her old ally and independent, she's going to run in this general election. Listen to her now.
And by any means possible, I will be the candidate for Hackney North.
Well, Labour at the high command level don't seem to be quite sure at all what's happening. They're hitting the phones trying to find out. Meanwhile, the phones are running red hot on the left of the party, because this had been a very carefully run selection process of general election candidates by Keir Starmer's Labour Party, and hardly any Corbynite, as you might say, new candidates had come through. Some MPs who consider themselves Corbynites were running for re-election. Diane Abbott might have been one of them, we don't know. But there was one new candidate that had made their way through the whole process, the candidate in Chingford, Faiza Shaheen. And it looks tonight as though her position is under threat because of tweets she may have liked relating to Gaza. And another candidate has a question mark next to their name today. One of those MPs, a Corbynite MP who's trying to get back in, the MP for Poplar, Absama Begum. There's a letter gone to the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party from some members in her constituency saying, we're not sure about whether she's been diligent enough, hard-working enough. All of this is arousing a lot of suspicion that there is a new layer. I mean, on the left, they thought there was a purge of candidates. They think it's gone to a last final stage, which is affecting some sitting MPs, some incoming candidates. And there's been suspicion for a while amongst the Corbynite Labour MPs that they weren't being allowed to, they were being told by the party HQ they couldn't put in their nomination papers until the 4th of June. Normally you put them in a bit earlier to make sure there's no accidents, you haven't put a mistake on the form which would invalidate it. They've been told you can't put it in until the 4th of June, and that's made them think, oh, is there a sword of Damocles over me? I was told by one figure on the left, there's an awful lot of us having sleepless nights right now. Well, there aren't many nights left, but they could carry on being sleepless all the way to that nomination deadline.
Thanks, Gary. Cathy.
Well, Labour weren't the only party struggling to stay on message today. In Scotland, the reaction of SNP leader John Swinney to a long-running row over a colleague's enormous iPad bill has been threatened to derail things for his party. Our Scotland correspondent Catherine Sampson has more.
It's already been quite the election journey for John Swinney. Out celebrating a new railway line this morning, his campaign messaging was being diverted by questions about his friend, Michael Matheson. He's the former Health Secretary who, on a holiday to Morocco, racked up an £11,000 data bill on his parliamentary iPad, repeatedly lied about it, then after sustained pressure, paid the money back and blamed his teenage boys.
I am a father first and foremost. Presiding Officer, the simple truth is they were watching football matches.
In a decision that stunned some in his party, John Swinney kicked off this election campaign last week by refusing to back sanctions against his friend that had been put forward by a cross-party committee. He said the process had been prejudiced. Today, just hours before a vote on those sanctions, things were looking fuzzier.
The Parliament's going to decide on these issues this afternoon.
And how are you going to vote?
Well, all the arguments will be set out to Parliament this afternoon.
And how are you going to vote?
And Parliament will be able to hear how we're going to vote later on this afternoon.
And why can't you tell me how you are going to vote?
Because it's important that we have a parliamentary debate and we shouldn't prejudge things.
Isn't this derailing your whole campaign? We're all talking about Michael Matheson. We're not talking about what you want to talk about.
Well, you've just got to be patient, Catherine.
Back at Holyrood, the Scottish Conservatives were calling for Michael Matheson's resignation as Scottish Labour went on the attack.
It is, presiding officer, the cover-up rather than the original sin that is always the problem. Members should cast their votes now.
As the Parliament voted to hand Michael Matheson a 27-day suspension, John Swinney and all of his MSPs chose to abstain.
If they choose to defend him and defend the indefensible, then it will be up to the voters across Scotland to judge on the 4th of July. And looking at the gloomy faces on the SNP benches today, I think they know what's coming.
In an election, timing really is everything.
You just have to play the ball as it lands. This wasn't part of my campaign plan, but the issue has arisen. And I have to, as First Minister, as leader of the Scottish National Party, I have to deal with what emerges in front of me.
So, Michael Matheson won't be returning here till at least September. In a statement, he says he regrets his actions, but he will not be resigning as an MSP. And unlike at Westminster, Holyrood has no recall process to force a by-election. In John Swinney's mind, he's simply been seeking fair and proper justice for his friend.
Okay, so you can take a picture.
On the doorsteps, colleagues fighting to keep their seats could find the public to be rather less forgiving.